turned it again, bruh.
Hence.
Go this way.
No touching.
Good. I just want to get the white
Hey
out
guys.
of it. There we go.
This is Jeff and Dan with
Dan.
Team Final Diction, Final Boss Diction Editing. But anyways, we're gonna do something a little bit different tonight and talk about some of the more theory of some of the things we picked up in writing. So we're gonna leave this recording on. We're gonna even pull the audio out and make a little podcast out of it. So you can hear just more of the unfiltered theory of some of the stuff we've picked up over the years, over time, and hopefully it will benefit you in your writing, especially because so many people that I've edited on stream are starting with fantasy. So we have a lot of fantasy writers. We were going to talk a little bit about world building.
Yes.
So as we talk about world building, there's a few kind of things that I've noticed, at least when I've read it a lot, especially from more amateur writers, where they'll run into a lot of the common pitfalls, which would be like a data dump, where they tell me everything about the world. I think actually something we read recently, me and Fox struggled with this, where someone had this really great idea, had this really great world, but they were spending so much time talking on the world, they missed one of the most important parts, which I think was starting with their characters, starting with their story, and getting me to care about something in the world before they explained the whole world to me. So I think that's one of the things we were going to talk about mainly tonight in this kind of little podcast. And this will probably only be about 15 minutes, and then we're going to go into an editor 20 minutes if people have questions. But I think we wanted to figure out, hey, what makes world building successful? How do you get into your world well? We're probably not going to talk tonight about all like the all the ways you would go about structuring it, all the ways you would brainstorm, all the things that you would care about there. We're going to more talk about saying, hey, assuming you have this world built, what are the best ways into it? What are the best ways to make that transition into a non-normal world as smooth as possible for the reader?
So basically we're talking about, how to get into it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like are we talking about what to start with in terms of the actual narrative, or are we talking about what to start with in terms of preparing for the beginning of your narrative?
I'd probably say in the actual narrative, just so we can, because I feel like a lot of the people I've talked to, they are like, okay, there's 50 islands, and they're all like this archipelago, and they have
sounds familiar.
Fish that have cats, and the cats are friends with the fish as opposed to natural enemies, which is amazing. And so, people usually, I feel like, at least people I've encountered have that part figured out, but when it comes to saying, hey, how do I start my story in this strange
So I have all of this world building knowledge. What do I start with in terms of page 1 of the narrative?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Now we're on the same page.
Yes, exactly. So, I think for me, and feel free to chime in, because I know you've done some fantasy stuff as well. Like, a lot of the things, I think the most important thing is starting with a character and a problem. Like, you treat it like a normal story. Have somebody struggling with something from day one and make it understandable. I think one of the...
And relatable.
Yeah, and relatable.
Not only understood, but something that we might deal with in our lives too.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of, especially epic fantasies with young protagonists, starting with mistreatment or being orphaned, and think about Harry Potter. Even the first thing is being bullied by Dudley. Like, that's pretty much one of the most relatable things in all of life. So I think that's like a really good point, right? Is to say, hey, we have to access at the human level first before we get into all the details and say, hey, this is someone I can understand. He's being bullied, and then he happens to be a wizard. I think one of the other things to think about there is a simple rule of thumb for a writer, so you can check yourself in this area, is to say, how many non-normal words are in my first chapter? And I think that's something I struggled with early on writing fantasy, and this was actually a piece of feedback I got, which is to say, hey, Jeff, you have so many new concepts coming in, so many strange worlds, so many, different languages. I just need to know, what's going on, why it's happening, and I can't understand that because there's so much terminology, there's so much data you're trying to get across in terms of, terminology that I'm having trouble picking up and getting really the action of the story, which is the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, any thoughts there on that?
So one way that I think about doing this is to really introduce or break down and list out what is a new concept and what is not. What's a fantastical concept that you're introducing and what's not. And start with, once you break those down, start with the one concept and like explore that for a little bit, for a few pages, a few paragraphs, a chapter, whatever. And then once you feel that you have that ingrained in your reader's head, then that's ingrained in their head, and then you can just sort of like reference it at will. And then once you have that completed, you move on to the next concept that you want to give, and then explore that for a little bit. And then once you have that explored and ingrained in the reader's head, you can reference it very quickly, and the reader knows what you're talking about. That's two concepts that you have, and then you just keep building from there. And then after a while, you just have a bunch of information that's sort of compressed down, that's been introduced and then compressed down to like a word. Like this is what a wormhole is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
After you've explained or like, I don't want to say explained. I want to say incorporated into your story what the concept of a wormhole is and how it functions in this world. Then you can just say wormhole and the reader knows exactly what you're talking about. So that idea of a wormhole has been compressed down to one word. And then if you do that with all of your other fantastical and sci-fi concepts, it'll just sort of snowball and build, and then eventually you'll just be able to talk as though the reader lives in the world.
Yeah, and I think kind of to that point, one of the things that I've seen help a lot is when the writer is referencing these things, especially, coming from the character's perspective. Some fantasy writers use this universal omniscient third person. That is very possible, but it's very hard to execute for any writer. But if you're seeing, a simple world, a lot of those characters with that close third person point of view, or even like an I character, like I don't know if you guys have read the Dresden Files, but this guy's like a wizard who solves mysteries. That's a lot of new information to get across. But one of the things is that I character is talking about all this stuff like it's part of his everyday life, like it's normal. And the only abnormal things are the conflict, which is like the real roots of the story. In the first Dresden Files, it's a murder, some very gruesome murder that happened, and he's gonna have to go try to solve it. But he's so busy being shocked about the murder and being like, oh my god, I don't believe this horrible thing happened to these two characters, that all the information about his magical skills, his world just kind of drips in and you don't even notice it. And they've kind of distilled it to these very simple things where he's like, I gotta make a potion, I'm gonna throw that together, and he does that, and then it helps him, obviously later on. But I think bringing those really, like, distilling those concepts to their most simplest point, and then bringing them in as just something that's natural about the world is really, really critical.
Something natural about the world, or something that it feels naturally to bring in at that point.
Exactly, that both. That's what I mean. Sorry, that it like feels like, hey, like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to talk about building a potion. I have to do one right now to find out the next where this murderer went. That's like the example in Dresden.
So the useful thing is, this is what I have to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, oh, there are these potions, and by the way, I have to do that next. So there's the need of the potion first, and then there's him going about it.
Yes.
Going about making it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the core. It's like you have to have a want, you have to have a need, you have to have a character desire first. And then, hey, if something in the world supplies that desire, all the better. And later on, I feel like if we talk about world building again, we'll probably want to say, hey, you want to be cautious of bringing stuff in late. So let's say you establish, one of the examples that I think has come out of a book recently is in one of the new Oathbringer books. There's like a certain way you can teleport between worlds, and kind of teleport between planes of existence. But one of the characters later on, does it himself and is able to like get some characters out of this like secondary dimension. That had been set up way earlier where they're talking about these things. They're talking about, hey, if you connect these worlds, you can get from one place to another. One of the things to avoid, and this we can talk about in like a later world building, is accidentally bringing in a new concept when it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
You want to establish those concepts and those rules of your world early, and I think that's what's relevant to this, like setting up your world conversation, which is saying when you establish something in your world, especially if it's going to come in and save the day later, or especially if that concept's going to come in and make a plot impact later, really look to make it something banal but necessary early on. So yeah, like
you said banal. Banal.
Banal. Is that the wrong way of saying it?
Is
that the wrong way? Is it banal?
Jeez, banal. Anyway,
I'm gonna go to Wikipedia and look that shit up.
One thing that you said earlier really resonated with me was the dripping.
Mm-hmm.
You drip it in, and going back to the potion making, something that could really elevate, which means sort of bury the insertion of that information of how to make a potion and what the potion will do, is to layer it with something that further founds it in the character. So like if this is a very easy potion for him to make, or if like he's allergic to one of the ingredients and he's focusing on that, you're getting told one thing and the other stuff is sort of dripping in and seeping in underneath it. So like if it's very easy for him to make and very routine, he has a certain approach to it, and he's going to focus on different things, but the information is going to get across. If it's a very complicated potion, he's going to be focusing on what exactly is complicated about it, but the other stuff is still going to get in under that. Or if he's like really tired, or something like that, you can bury it under a layer of something.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's like bringing it into that character and saying, hey, maybe it's like, I think Dan's example was a good one where it's like he's allergic to something in it, and all he's thinking about when he's making this potion is like, gosh damn it, like I have to use freaking cat hair in this. It's the worst. I always cough, and but I have to use this tracking potion to find this murderer or whatever. And then down the road, we already know how the tracking potion works. We know its rules because they've been snuck in as he's been whining about his allergies.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes in and we actually find that it's led us somewhere different, or that, it has that later reveal later on, we already know the rules of the potion. So once the action starts, we can just enjoy it, right? Yeah, I think, I'm trying to think some of the other big pitfalls I've seen with, I think prologues are something that are risky. I'm actually debating on doing one, which is really concerning. But I read, so what I did before I embarked on that was I read like 3 or 4 prologues from books I liked, and I thought they did it well. And it's the very same thing. It's usually a formative event in someone's life with lots of conflict. It's almost never, the creation story or like the world's origin story. That's, I think, one of the things that I've encountered more in fiction that has, especially written by newer writers or people that are, I feel like a lot of new writers try to figure out their world on the page as opposed to saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm going to figure this out off the page and only bring in the most important facts. And that's what reading groups are so important, because if you're the writer and you're like, neck deep in this, you're so focused on your story, it's very easy to get lost, and it's very easy to want to tell the reader everything. But remember, the characters in your world already know everything. They've heard this origin story since they were a kid. There's no really good reason they would be telling that to me as the reader now, unless it relates to the conflict and the situation that's going on, the goal that's going on.
Or if there's something weird about it. Like, my dad told me this story over and over and over again. I just saw something that makes me question that. It's like, you're telling the story, or the story's coming across, but you're not telling the story. The origin story is going to come across while he's sort of analyzing what why this doesn't equate, this one thing that he found out doesn't equate with the rest of the story. It doesn't agree with the rest of the story. So that's sort of like layering it, burying it under a layer of through the character's need to understand why this one thing doesn't add up.
And I think probably that's another one of my other big points is when it comes to the characters, what a lot of times I'll see people who are building a new world outline is they'll say, hey, this character is a rogue and they have magical powers and they have all this stuff, but they forget some of those things that make those characters so real and so fun to connect with, which is like, hey, were his parents divorced? Does he have bitterness against his family? Like those types of questions, even in a fantasy world, are the ones that can really bring that relatability to the readers, saying, hey, was he bullied? Like, Harry Potter, yeah, he's a wizard, he has all sorts of magical powers, but he's this kid who'd been bullied his whole life and who misses his mom and dad so much, and that's like this anchor that comes back and makes him relatable through all these ups and downs. And same with, almost any other book. Dresden Files is just a, nerdy guy who's in over his head. So a lot of these things are really, really relatable. And you have to, before you write your first page and you're forming those characters, they may be a rogue barbarian, but make sure they have some of those human problems as well. And make them stuff that maybe even you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, hey, that will be able to let you write it with a bit more authenticity to say, hey, I know what it's like. Let's say you're Harry Potter. I know what it's like to have people pick on me. I can really write that really well. And that'll make that moment, even if it's in like the planet Zaruba with like freaking tropical laser storms, if someone's getting picked on in a tropical laser storm, people will know what to do about that. And they'll say, I know how to feel about this if some antagonists are hurting somebody I care about.
That's really
That's a great example.
Yeah, that's a really great example. But even like people like to focus on sort of negative things when they consider the character stories. And this might be getting slightly off base, but off topic. But shush. It could also be like a positive thing. Like I was trying to think of other fantasy examples other than Harry Potter of like what gets the story started in a new world, and Bilbo Baggins came to mind. Mm-hmm. There's nothing negative about that. He just has a sense of adventure that he wants to explore. Like he's different from all the other hobbits. Hobbits are happy being hobbits in the Hobbit, but he's not. He wants to go on an adventure, whether he knows it or not. And he's just sort of drawn into this thing because of not a negative thing. I don't know if it's a positive thing, but it's certainly not a negative thing to have that adventurous spirit. And he's just like, all these dwarves show up, and he's sort of seduced by this sense of adventure. Yeah. And that gets the story going. And you learn all about the world from Bilbo's sense of adventure and how he's not really sure about it. And, to go one layer deeper, that's sort of like what you can relate to as a reader in Bilbo's sense of adventure is that it's not a acceptable part of society at that point. So you have this craving that society says you shouldn't have. And that is, I think, one of the relatable terms that we can carry over to, that you can see in human life, but is carried over into the fantasy world.
Yeah, I think that's a great example too, because Bilbo is like this very he has these very relatable longings. He's pretty much just like a British guy, break it down. He's just some like frumpy British guy. But one of the things that Tolkien does, I think that's also really smart, is that he makes him the fish out of he's in a fantasy world, sure. Like the Shire is not a real place; it's kind of crazy and zany, but he uses Bilbo's lack of knowledge about the elves, the lack of knowledge about all this stuff, about this ring. And think about it, the most important the most important talisman in all that book. He's just finds it on the floor, and he's so in the problem of I am lost in a tunnel and I do not know how to get out of here. I'm freaking out. That's how Tolkien introduces this big thing is in the midst of chaos. And there is also the good where Bilbo's like, the Shire is amazing. I love it. It is the life I want. But as he goes into that new world, that is also a really great opportunity for those other things to get dripped in, where they're saying, hey, Bilbo, don't talk like that to the elves. They do this and this and this. Or like Bilbo's walking into this place and his eyes are just wide. And he's like, I've never seen this before. This is out of my ordinary. So in order for you to explain something like it's out of the ordinary and making it this big deal, a lot like how he does with the elves, it's usually a great idea to have a fish out of water character going into that new world as well. But and I know we're running a little bit over time. Should we jump into edit?
Sure.
Good deal. Well, I will so take a second here, and I will jump into an edit. So we're going to edit Chad. I think it's the Chodfather. His story, which is a fantasy story, and hopefully we'll be able to. I hope it's perfect and flawless, and then we can all give good examples and be like, wow, this is exactly how you all should do it. Okay, I do not have edit access, so I'm going to make a copy. Yo, I love podcasts. What up, Strudel? Well, that's the podcast. So that is our talk on world building. It is going to be published and released. It should be. We have to figure that out. But yeah, that was the initial podcast, and then now we're going to do a deep dive edit into Saber Dance
with a special eye towards world building.
A special eye towards world building, indeed. So yeah, the first thing. When did you start a podcast? This is the very first. This is the inaugural. So we're just doing the audio here, and then we are going to do an edit. And so like the audio part is a little bit less interactive, but this edit part will be a lot more interactive.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions while we're doing the edit.
Let's see if I can find Microsoft Word edit. Yay! Hooray, go us. I learned all my systems. I know, get hype. Get hype. Is it going to be published or released? Yes, I think I have to go or we probably both need to take a look and see what like the best methods for that and what are the ways people get it out there. But what we're going to do is we're going to strip the audio out and then jump into this. So this is Saber Dance.
Go back to the video for a second.
Oh yeah, good idea. Boom. There we go. Yeah, it's like inverted. I should do a mirror image on it. Yeah, this is Saber Dance. So let's talk about the world building. And you can see here, we're getting, this is a good and a bad thing. By having a new and a proper noun in the first sentence, it can draw us in. It'll tell us it's signaling to the reader it's a new world. But there is a little bit of that risk of kind of like what we talked about during the little podcast section, where there are, too many new names coming in. And I did get a haircut recently this afternoon.
Afternoon?
Yeah, I know.
And the dentist, wow.
Yeah, today was my Today was get my life taken care of and like get some stuff done. But yeah, so this goes back to one of the points you made earlier, where it's okay to have proper nouns, made up words early on, but you'll want to kind of minimize those. So if there's a lot of them coming in, it's going to be a lot of data for that reader. You should play the song Saber Dance on loop the whole time while you're reading this. Guts. I know. The isolated island of Draconium Imperium.
In the isolated. It should be on probably.
Fall begin. That's right. Interesting. On the isolated island of Draconium, fall began to set in. Again, it was time for the grand selection. Slide this over here so I can read my own notes. This was the time for Harvest Festival's celebration and a chance for each group of youngsters to etch their names into history. So, I think this is an interesting opening. Kind of to Dan's earlier point, one thing to consider is to bring this in from the character's perspective. Maybe it's a kid that's running errands, getting ready for this festival. And he's like, oh my God, I lost the money my mom needed me to buy to buy the bread, the special whatever bread for this celebration.
Harvest Festival milk.
The cow's mother's milk. This field, especially opening with exposition on chapter 1, it is an option. I've seen successful books do this, but it is not going to hook your reader in as much as a character with a problem. And I may come later, but yeah, we'll talk.
Even think about cutting the first paragraph and just going in. I just read the first line of the second paragraph. and it was rooted in a character. So if you want to do a thought exercise, you could cut out the first paragraph and see how it reads without that first paragraph. And then, depending on how well that goes, you can revert it back to have the first paragraph there, or you can sort of drip in the information from the first paragraph over the course of the rest of the chapter. And also, think of a good example I thought of was the Hunger Games with the reaping.
Yeah, when she's trying to get meat and something in the beginning, right?
Yeah, it's the day of the reaping, but she's going through like her normal day, which builds the world, which does a lot of work to build the world. But it's not just a normal day. You get that what her normal day would be because she's doing the same motions, but her mind is on like this is the reaping is later today. This is a big thing.
I gotta get the meat I need to like provide for my family in case I get.
Am I gonna get selected? Is Prim gonna get selected? Gale's probably gonna get selected because he's getting reaped like 6 times or whatever.
Yeah.
Or he's I forget. He's got like 6 names in the.
Like trying to like get more food or something.
Yeah, his family was poor, so he had to put his name in more times. It's been a long time since I read those books, but I thought that did a good job of building the world at a very
like at a
pleasing pace.
At a character level too.
At a character level.
Because we know Katniss, and you relate to someone who's going out to get food for their family, even though they're a kid and that shouldn't be their responsibility. And then they drip that information in.
Mm-hmm.
Every festival throughout the Empire's spectacles were unfolding as willful youths of the realm would test each other. Those deemed, I feel like you have to read that in a British accent, those deemed passing accepted into one of the many military academies, and those who proved themselves as far above their peers. So this is a lot of information. Like shock troops employed in decisive battles, but enough of this boring general nonsense. Let's get to the beginning of the Saber's most infamous commanders. So, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy here. The general stuff, like it's actually even harder to retain as a reader unless there's a character I care about behind it. So, like, if I was to quiz Dan, maybe he has a better memory than me about, like, hey, what are the shock troops and how do they relate and, like, what's the purpose of the festival? He probably wouldn't be able to give me a great answer. Or probably wouldn't even be able to quote what's in this paragraph. Besides, like, kind of this, like, I kind of get this general sense of, like, grandness.
Mm-hmm. But
people will retain a lot more of the details about your world, even if they're coming through.
Dripped.
Yeah, dripped in, and they're coming through that character source, exactly. Ansari's body was tense and she waited. Her short black hair was tucked back and out of the way. The torchlight cast a soft light on her surprisingly noble features. The girl's thin but wiry frame had been a strength she had gained through the years of laborious farm work and training. Selection hopeful. The military observer finally announced, "You are all here in the hope to join." When I would just say, that's like a duplicate. Hopeful is in hope. That feels kind of bumpy. Those of you, but we're not going to talk too much about dialogue. Those of you who will pass will be accepted into the branch of that supreme council as elected to assign to you. The already impatient girl fidgeted as she waited on the start line. Why can't the stupid test just begin already? She spat under her breath. It was bad enough that her small village didn't have enough willing participants to fill out the selection test, but rather than seeking volunteers to another village, they pressured other sightless willing participants into joining. The reward of the Daredevil farm stipend. This actually seems like a very similar setup where she's trying to get food for her family. Perhaps it will allow her family younger brother to survive the disastrous harvest this season had brought them. Like this motivation for food. I think that's been the most concrete thing I've been able to hold on to so far. Just because there is a lot of new concepts coming in.
And that's something you might want to expand out and explore as part of the
like intro,
the thing that hides that you're giving them information.
Yeah, like the envelope for that stuff.
Yeah, it's like we need food. How do we get food? We have this avenue of
getting food. Yeah, and it's this like
getting a stipend or getting an extra stipend, but the cost of it is this, and Mom doesn't approve of this, but I think this is really good. Or my brother went and did too many,
Yeah.
and he was too selfless. He did too many, and now he's screwed.
He's going to this thing, or we can't. Yeah.
And now I've had to do this thing to. So it's just a bunch of that stuff would get the information in about the world, but have it be focused and layered underneath the character and the character's motivations.
Yeah. The question is, how can you explain this harvest contest without explaining the harvest contest?
It's kind of like a game of catchphrase where you have to say, you have to get your teammate to guess the phrase without saying the phrase.
Yeah. It's very similar. So it's saying, hey, like, can we heighten that want so much and make this contest her only hope? So as she goes and pursues her only hope, we kind of learn the mechanic. Like, the mechanics of it aren't as important as what it means to the character in general. So the fact that she thinks this is her only hope, we're going to start like trying to understand it. Perhaps it's roared to allow her family being able to survive the hardest season. Heavenly Mother's bloody divine favor above swore impatient to start to follow it. Failed a test already. She knew why she was here. She had news for glory or rank. She only wished to receive the damned stipend. She began to curse this affair. Okay, so that's good. That motive for food. Almost called to her, and with quick look at the other tabs, eagerly waiting for their short run at fame. Found the culprit. Harton McLaren. Stupid boy was mouthing bastard at her, snickering. Quiet rage boiled within, like which she had not experienced in her 17 winters. She was already irritated at this whole stupid affair. This jab at her parentage was the last thing she wanted to deal with. The Army Blowhard spokesman started to wrap up his long speech.
Blowhard.
Yeah, yeah, that was that thing. It's like, yeah, okay.
The Army Blowhard.
The Army Blowhard spokesman. It's like, oh, okay. The Ansari smiled and mouthed disappointment back at the bully. She was taking a shot at his pride and aimed and went up to herself. Damn simply. So you even have a bully here, which is something funny because that was an example we were using earlier. But that's like, this is a very light action. You know, maybe it's something that on her way he shot, because like this doesn't feel like a really intense exchange, but maybe because there's no stakes. He's just saying something mean, and she's kind of like, "Yeah, you suck back." But maybe he takes her entry, like, so like maybe she has this item she needs to deliver to the harvest to get in and get this food that she wants, and he takes that from her and is going to use it himself. That is suddenly much more important to me because I know the stakes of that. That's another really important thing to have early on in the world building, is have something at stake that's relatable. So you already kind of have that. Hey, what's up, Forgotten Shadows? Welcome. Been a while indeed. Been a while indeed. How's life? How's writing? Consider adding some stakes to this battle with the bully. Does he steal something she needs to get for her family? Stuff like that. Those are just some questions I would really consider asking, because that can be developing new ideas for a project. That's awesome. Feel free to share your premises, and we'll always be reading them. But yeah.
And also, this kind of feels like what we were talking about earlier with those concepts that need to be explored for a little bit so they can be compressed later on and referenced. One would be there's food that we need to get. Why? And another would be why we need to get the food. Then another would be what this thing is that they're getting food from. Why that this military race, I guess, is happening.
Yeah, to be in the
to get that stipend. Why that's a solution. And then what we were just talking about with the bully, that concept needs to be explained as well before we can start referencing it, because I don't understand like how it fits into everything. I don't understand what it means. I don't understand if like it's just sort of like referenced. I felt like I should have known more about it before I got to this point, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. One thing to think about is, you know, in your story, in any story in general, is like, where is your starting point? What do you open with? And usually it has to be so simple that you can easily grasp it. And it has some stakes and some goal and some conflict in it, right? So I feel like this is a little bit it's missing that because I don't think we've gotten enough about the contest to really understand why it matters. Besides, there's some connection with food in this contest and becoming a general or something. The grand selection. So it's about a girl who doesn't know she's dead until she sees the late news reports about her death. Yikes. It's pretty cool. I like that concept, Forgotten Shadow. It's like legitimately a Forgotten Shadow. Zing! Zing! And now I wish you all bright and hopeful candidates the best of luck as you undergo the rigorous selection ceremony. A bell sounded, the participants lined up and gained a lead, and Ansari set a comfortable yet competitive pace and soon found herself near the front of the main. It's an autobiography. Nice. Wait, I see dead people? I chat with dead people? The first test was almost always an obstacle course, and each successive obstacle was encountered. Okay. So it's sort of like that most extreme elimination challenge.
Yes.
The water. The leader, it's a walk on dominoes. The leader, Karen, was well within striking distance as the contenders neared the final obstacles. This was a chance she had hoped for. So consider doing like a bit of a play-by. So I do really need to feel the stakes of her food. I kind of want to see her like starving mom. Like honestly, like make me feel so bad for her and her situation that I want her to win this. Because like we're kind of going through this competition, but I don't feel this like ache of desire for her to be successful and to win this thing. So give us more of the family's stakes so we care that she can win this.
So, one, like, for this, I just had a very clear vision of how the stakes could work. One, like, the very base stakes is she needs food to feed her starving mom or family or to feed starving people. That's the very base. That's what you start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so how do you get more food?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what this thing is with the selection and the military.
Mm-hmm.
There's like selection and stipend. They're confusing me, those two terms. But I'm getting the idea that the way to get food is to get this stipend, and this stipend is inherently dangerous. I'm guessing, or maybe I'm projecting from Hunger Games. So that's raising the stakes. So there's the baseline stakes, and then there's the raising of the stakes. And then the stakes would raise even further if not only does she have to deal with that, but she has to deal with this stupid fucking bully.
Yeah, who took her entry or whatever.
Took her entry, or I mean, is Carton on the same class as her? Is he in the same situation and he's just like taking because he can? Is he like a caste above her? I don't know, but that's a raising of the stakes from there. So it's not sort of adding stakes so much as it is finding something that raises the stakes and compounds the problem.
Yeah, I would agree. I also I also think that like I kind of see this. I'm beginning to read this the interaction with her and Cardinal a little bit after. You know, flopping down the cool graph, she lets out a laugh, but like I haven't seen him really be that much of a jerk besides him just kind of calling her name. So yeah, like I think
the jerkness was kind of implied.
Yeah, she relished in the pleasure and that Carton's anger would bring her. She knew how much his victory would get under her skin. I thought she was here for the food, not necessarily for him. So those are the types of questions I'm starting to ask. She had finally caught her breath and calmed down. Nice job. You managed to beat me, fatherless of war. He snickered. You'll end up no different than your she's
so slut of a mother.
I know the rest of the selection will show you this was just a fluke. This is the Chod Fathers. Oh, and yes, you guys are still going to take a look at the Platonic Complex. Feel free to send it. Here is our link. 4 minutes. And we can do like another, if it's a fantasy, we can do a little world building talk before. Yeah, I may start just doing that before any edit. just like saying, hey, let's just sit down and talk through concepts. The entitled self-centered, unforgivable ass. She added Ansari's buttons. Just as quickly as she calmed, she was back wanting to eat. The receding hatred show. Prepare for the next athletic mystery. Very nice. Yet no one was able to figure out that it was simply humiliate a hated rival. Rumors circle to this day, getting more ridiculous with each passing year. Next test was the show of archery skill, which was won by Ansari. So she's winning all the tests. Carton won wrestling. Ansari won swordplay. Bill and Ansari got strategy. By the end of the day, it was Ansari who won those tests, and she finally could see the disappointed look on Carton's face as he chewed out by his father for losing to the no-good, fatherless bastard. Rude. Her happiness was short-lived. I do like that you give us a little view into Carton's motivations and why he's a jerk, because his dad's a jerk. I think that's really humanizing. So I think that's world building well done. Because we all know even in it, they had the bully with the abusive father, or the bully who's been indoctrinated with some really messed up stuff. So I think that's really effective that you're using that here, and it makes this world
world building. I think it's more character building.
True. True.
Yeah. I guess it's world building in the sense that it's letting us know that having a complete nuclear family is respected, I guess, above having or being a bastard, or that's the kind of society they live in. But I think to what you were speaking of, that it's good character building because it complicates the character, it complexifies it. I don't think that's a word, but it makes the character more complex. Because you don't Carton up until this point was a very, very dislikable character, and then all of a sudden we have some empathy toward him.
Yeah,
we don't hate him so much because we can imagine that he's been poorly treated,
kind of pushed into this really cruel
yeah
perspective. Okay. The happiness was short-lived as the consequences of her performance dawned on her. Performance was more than enough to get her a spot in whatever branch of the military. Forced to give up all she left. And because to her pride told her. So you're telling me she's going to be separated from her family. It's going to be very painful. One of the downsides of not having shown me her family first and the struggles they're going through and stuff like that is that doesn't feel like a real problem. It feels a little light where I'm like, well, she's kind of been doing things on her own anyways, or at least as far as all I've been told is she seems to be very independent. Because all she's doing is entering this context to help her family. So these are the types of things where I would say this is a little bit less to do with world building and more to do with just building her motivations, which will help you slip the world in. But I would really consider giving us some of that view into her family that makes us care. So it's a problem that they're encountering, stuff like that.
Also, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think it is always appropriate, but I think frequently it's a good idea to use scene to get the world building aspects in. When you're just explaining it, it feels more like an info dump.
I agree. Maybe I'll put that for the
So,
top.
for example, if you're going to go back and you're going to meet the family, and you're going to make us care about the family and care that Amasari loves her family, and we want her to be able to provide for her family. But you're also going to be like, okay, here's this problem, here are the stakes, we have to get food, we don't have enough food, and it's at a critical point, so we need to do something special to cure that. Here's this stipend that we can go get. Or here's this idea. Amasari's like, hey, we could get this stipend. And then maybe the mom says, no, it's too dangerous. And he's like, no, but we need it. I'm really good at this stuff, and I think I can win. And then the mom's like, I don't like it. And then they have that back and forth, but it's all in scene, and you're getting info about the world and the competition that she's about to enter just from the dialogue.
Yeah, and what if mom was like, hey, kids die in this thing. I'm not letting you leave. And then she locks her in her room, and then this girl has to sneak out. It's like those are the types of things that could be really helpful in terms of raising the stakes, giving us that world information in scene as opposed to in summary.
And also, when you're in scene, it's very founded in a character. It's very naturally you gravitate towards the character's experience. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're just sort of giving a narrating, it's a little bit more removed, and you're able to do different things. But yeah, when you're in the scene, the natural instinct is to dive into the character's experience. So that's also a good way to get the world building.
Yeah. Sure. I emailed you. Well, looking forward to reading your work, Forgotten Shadows. Let us know if there's a particular type of writing question you have, because we'll be talking about those writing questions before we start. I think for this one, world building was pretty intuitive. But if you're saying, hey, I have trouble making character arcs pay off, building a character arc, how do I do that? Free to just ask in the emails. Call me Shadows. Forgotten was my fault. the fool. And sorry, you're amazing. Mother said, you're sure to be selected. Yes, Mother, she replied emptily. I'm going to go home. All those tests left me exhausted. Yes, of course. Her mother, ever supportive mother, smiled. I keep on laughing because
they have a very high diction.
Yeah,
it's almost like they're
no good fatherless.
Poor starving family. They're very well spoken.
That's true. Yes, of course.
Yes, of course.
We'll try and save some sweets for you. That's nice. Mother's genuine, sincere words always had a way of piercing Amram's walls. You know what my biggest problem is? Doing slice of life-esque scenes that keep you interested until we get to the more important stuff that actually matters. Good. It's a good. We'll put that on our list. I'll make a new list here for potential blog post ideas, or potential podcast ideas, because it's really helpful. That is a tough problem. Depending on the story, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. What up, 667? Welcome. Her mother's genuine and sincere words melted her heart and softened her mind. These thoughts waited upon her mind and made the long walk out of town such and such, and while she contemplated what making it in an academy would mean for her and her family, clearly the Imperium would reward its top candidates. These thoughts weighed deeply upon Amram's young mind. That's a... Yeah, okay, yeah. I was like... Yeah, thank you. Do you ever get to my priority outline? Just wondering. Not yet. It is next after this one. Childfather submitted a bit before your priority outline. It is important for the relatability of your characters for the reader to see them in a natural state and not just in the midst of their problems. Yeah.
So like at the Hunger Games, which is going around, getting all the food and hunting and like that.
Yeah, I mean my mini thought about that is give them little goals, right? Like you don't leave your house unless you have a goal. You're going to the supermarket, something like that, and give a little mini obstacle or a hint of danger in the future. So saying, let's say they're going to have a conflict with her sister. Maybe her sister took the car and then she now has to walk to the supermarket and she's super annoyed. She's saying, hey, freaking Sandra took the car and she sucks and I hate her and blah, and then she gets to the store and then she forgot her wallet, she has to walk all the way back, and stuff like that can start making those more slice of life scenes a little bit more punchy. Her mind was light with questions even when she tried to lay down to sleep. Her mind remained as active as before. Little could be done to calm her nervous thoughts. Sandra sucks. Sandra's so worse. It was still between her mother's pride and her concerns. Finally, sleep came to bring to a stop. Her divided mind. Okay, her dreams swirled, not even sleep could calm her trouble. Flashed through her head. She settled into a fitful, uneasy sleep. This is kind of a show don't tell thing, and you're doing a really great job of describing what's going on. But it's the difference between getting a book report and actually reading the novel, or getting a play-by-play. So saying she rolled over in bed, she couldn't get there was a hard spot right under her shoulder. She had to roll back to her other side. Like that type of play-by-play can show me she's having a fitful sleep. But then you can slip in those world-building details to say she waved her hand and with her magic turned on her lamp and then read her book. Like that's like, oh, cool. Like there's magic in this world, and apparently it's like pretty common. Like whatever that looks like is like really critical. So by getting into that scene more, especially here, even in these like downtimes, we're very severely trimming them. So just saying she had a really bad night's sleep. That is summary, that is telling. But then let's say there's nothing valuable or nothing dramatic in that scene. Like you usually don't want to go to a scene unless there's some sort of drama, there's some sort of conflict, there's some sort of issue, problem, goal. Then you'll say, hey, if it's not going to be dramatic, let's say there's no drama that you could tease out of this her fitful sleep, then dramatically shorten the summary. And then just be like, she had a rough night's sleep, woke up the next day, and then the scene happened. Consider showing us a scene more. Is the shot father here watching this? He is not, but I always send people the videos of their edits, so then he'll be able to go through it. Showing us a scene more here and letting us experience this night of bad sleep.
I think that's not the point. That's not the whole point of the area. I'm saying what you're writing is it might be wrong because, or at least until the earth-shattering roar of a dragon.
Because it is set upright.
So she's already like having trouble sleeping, but that's not the point. The point is that she's having trouble sleeping, and then this thing happened.
It's the dragon. Anyways, so consider cutting summary or just giving us enough sleep.
Well, it seems like that's the moment that everything since she got home is building to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it works a little bit more than we think it works, but I would love more of the big sister, because that seems to be what she's thinking about. I don't know who Grain is, or Grind. And Mariana. I would like to like, she's having trouble sleeping, fine. But like, what's she thinking about that's giving her trouble sleeping? Or what's causing the thing, and what's causing the trouble sleeping, and what is she thinking about while she's just hanging in non-sleepitude?
Yeah.
That's the craziest word I've ever heard.
But
yeah, so if I could see more about like what she's thinking about, and then have that be interrupted by the dragon, then that makes me more invested. I'm in it. What's the word? Like I'm sunk into the story.
Yeah. I think the problem with summary is it makes it feel like you it's more thought, it's not emotion. Like scene drags you into the emotion, it makes you like visualize the world a little clearer. Like it's kind of
immersed.
Yeah, immersed. There you go. It's hard for us to visualize the bedroom. What like her, because like me having a fitful night's sleep can be going to get a glass of water, whereas Dan having a fitful night's sleep might just be like reading a book in his bed. So like those types of less concrete things are harder for the readers to consistently visualize, rather than saying she rolled over in bed, grabbed a glass of water, stomped over to the window, and like stared outside watching people walk. So like those types of things can make your reads more consistent, which is usually very critical, because then you can ensure, let's say you're trying to accomplish an effect in the reader, but by making it so abstract, I have just jumped to another assumption that can really hurt what you're trying to accomplish.
And it's also important to decide whether you want it to be like a camera looking at the person, or if you want to be rooted in the person's experience. Both are appropriate in different circumstances.
Depends on your goals.
It depends on what you want to get and what you're shooting for.
Shop Father watching. No, I want to be here for your interactivity. Yes, well, feel free to come on. We will on. James mellowed out, shifting from uncertainty and anxiety of the selection to family. Many different scenes showed their pride, okay. At least until the nerve-shattering roar of a dragon caused Ansari to sit up. She took a few deep breaths, and Rule looked out beyond the small cottage under her thatched roof. Straw kept the rain at bay. The solid wood frame held the house upright, and the large fireplace served as the sole heat. His dream left her slightly shaken. She couldn't. The young soldier awake. So the dragon was a dream? No.
This is one of those world building things where it'd be really like interesting to know whether this was, or like, I don't know whether dragons are just like commonplace, and hearing a dragon roar is just like hearing a dog bark outside your window. Yeah. It'll startle you awake, but it's just like, okay, it's a dog, it's fine. Or if like a dragon's been this extinct thing for a long time, like what? Yeah. Or dragons don't exist in this part of the realm.
Yeah. I gotta tell you, the life of the mind, there's no roadmap for that territory, and exploring it can be painful. It's very true. Very true. The young soldier awakes with a smile. With the triumphant victor of the... And her mother is like very like, good evening, sir. Would you like some tea? I happen to be something of a strumpet. Many apologies. At least according to your bully. And the young soldier awakes. Her mother smiled. With a triumphant victor of the latest grand selection, like some breakfast. Girl had nodded in response. She was not the morning person in the slightest, nor was she really broad questions that would come from younger siblings. Mommy, is it true you're going to be a saber? Sis, do you know when you have to leave? Do you get a sword? Can I see your sword? The little kids went on and on, rapid firing questions until their big sister silenced them. Yara, great, Mara, I don't know anything, she replied. I won't know all the details until the selection results are delivered. And if I got into the academy, then a member of the academy would deliver that news in person. Oh, don't worry, honey. So that's actually a decent piece of world building that comes in at a relevant point. You know, and she's explaining something to a character that doesn't notice it. Doesn't know it. One of the other risks of world building is on-the-nose dialogue, which is explaining something to someone who should already know it. So being like, well, you know how this spaceship works. You have to put your hand on the hyperdrive motivator and press forward twice, and then you can jump between stars. Duh, Captain. Like
Captain, man who runs the ship.
Yeah. So those types of things happen, and less extreme versions. But this is a good reason because the kids may not know. But I believe that she would be right in explaining this to them. Good use.
So long story short, this is a good use of world building.
Yeah, exactly. Use of the to explain a concept to a character that doesn't know.
Maybe we should come up with a term for the world building we're talking.
Like immersive world.
Like buried world building.
Buried world building. It's true.
Something like that. How to bury your world building.
It's true. Who's Barry? Seems like
Barry!
Barry, where's my world? Oh, don't worry, honey. With that exceptional performance, they are sure to accept you. I think you may even get invited to saber training. The mother let out a quick laugh before serving breakfast. Barrage of questions continued all the way through breakfast, with Ansari offering little to nothing in way of answers. The little gremlins knew as much as she did about the selection results, yet they still continued every question possible. No real end in sight. Breakfast ended in the day's chores. Chores were started. Sorry, little grammar will tweak me out every now and then if I'm paying attention. The next 2 weeks passed without news of the selection results. Each passing only deepened her doubts, encouraged her siblings, and so I don't really know what she's not getting by not winning. Besides maybe the food, but her mother and her sisters seem to be more worried about her not winning. Because they're like, hey, you did such a great job. But they're not like,
my God, we won't know until 3 weeks. I guess we're gonna have to like go.
Like, how do we fix our food problem if we
Maybe-
don't know for 3 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, is that why they call the mom all these names? Because she's like out hustling on the streets trying to like pay the bills.
Yeah.
Like, that's compelling. That's like
Is,
really
is
dark,
that why?
obviously,
Is that
but-
why she's a strumpet?
Yeah.
That's why she's considered a strumpet, because she's just been trying to get some money for some food.
Yeah. Remind me the personal stakes of what happens if the choosing fails. Does mom go on the streets?
Again,
Again, mom. Sitting in the rain all night won't write books. Well, that demonstrates exactly how much you know about writing books. Stranger than fiction. It's true. It's a good line. It's true. Didn't have much left to write in, but she didn't want to say all along. She's simply continued here. Iron, I seek your counsel. Sorry, humbly spoke. Rise, my child, and speak your troubles. Elder replied, It's my responsibility of the old to guide the young. Notice the elderly man smiled slightly, let a small chuckle. So I kind of want to know her goal with this. So before you jump in, this is less about world building and more just like setting up a scene. Give us a little bit about why the hero is here and why they're doing what they're doing, so we can have something to wonder about if it will be successful or not. So maybe she's like, hey, no one normally talks to this elder. I need to go and figure out if he can get me money in the meantime. What's the goal for going to the elder? Show us what could go bad if she fails.
oh, sorry, I read forward. I never actually wanted to do well in the selection. I was really only in it for the stipend. Okay, that needs to be made
Never been
clearer up front before she gets into the competition. So you get into you do the competition to get the stipend, and the bully, the way the bully operates is he tempts her into doing very well in it, and then she gets, oops, I did really well. Now I have to go into the army.
And that's why her family is stressed out, because they think she's leave. I thought they were stressed out.
They seemed like they were excited about her doing so well in the competition, though.
Yeah, I guess. So then I would clarify. Then why is her family? Like, if I was her mom and like my one source of food might be gone, or like the stipend, then then why isn't her family worried that she?
Yeah, her family's super excited about it.
Her family seems pumped. So her her worries seem less grounded. So I'm like, well, if her mom, who Ansari is worried about in the first place, isn't stressed, then why should I really believe Ansari's stress?
I thought the family would be hungrier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Based on like what motivated her to do the competition in the first place.
Yeah. So you wish to know if you should accept a commission or not? Yes, child, I know your parentage is difficult. Yikes. You must make your own path in life. Living another's dream is the sure path to hardship. Each must struggle to forge their own path in life. That is the only way to true happiness. Yes, I understand. And Sari sighed and looked inside herself for guidance and finally spoke to the elder. I've never really known what I want to do with my life, but now I almost feel like Katharina is speaking to me. Tells me my purpose. I fear for my family. Fear they won't be able to survive without me. Child, how arrogant are you? Family, you arrogant ass mother. Okay, the family will be taken care of. There are 3 other siblings to take up your role. Do you really think the Imperium will let us start recruiting without their needs attended to? Okay, that's good. So she's discovering that this is a new way to meet her goal. Okay. Try to cover any last minute talk. We can also wrap up in a page or two. Sorry, the elder continued for a while, and Haran was doing his best to placate the young one's close. The conversation continued for the better part of 2 hours. The village's star candidate left feeling clear of her choice now. The walk out of the village was fairly quiet, and she tried last minute thoughts.
Think of any last minute thoughts?
Just a clarification.
It's almost like there just needs to be a scene break or a section break after the conversation. So when starting with Emissary and the Elder continue to talk for a while, with Irene doing his best to placate the young woman's fears. That's just kind of like summary, and I think you can. I don't think it detracts if you just sort of like cut to the next thing.
Should make a space. She was anxious to return home, or
to like start the next big thing is her sort of like considering what Irene has said and deciding whether she actually wants to go through with it. Right? Something like that.
The walk home lasted for the better part of 3 hours. This involved curiosity, hunger. This seems antithetical. So, like, why is she doing this instead of going back to her family and, like, telling them what? Is she doing this rather than reporting what the elder said to her family? She wandered the forest path for a while, lost in her thoughts, allowing the soothing effect of the trees to comfort her. The forest air was alive in the sounds of woodlands. That's another one where, you can always be a little more concrete if you can. Like, what does that sound like? What is the forest air being alive? Like, noises erupted from every bush. What those are kind of things that can make those more abstract sentences a little more concrete and immerse us in the scene a little bit more. The sun poked its way through the gaps in the treetop. Beams of light fell on the woodland floor below. The combination of the serene landscape and the sage advice helped to calm the turbulent seas. Now, that's pretty abstract. I kind of want to know what that, like, does it mean she doesn't feel anxious anymore? Does she not have her heart pumping fast? Does she not, what does that mean? Yeah, I just say I'd push to be more concrete. She could now think clearly and was able to make a decision to lost and not looking, pushing, making use her speed and slender form to slip any narrow shortcut slashing. Track. Love S sounds, but the quick pace she had set with a few lucky breaks she'd make it home just in time after running for well over a league. She exited the wood and into farmland.
Why is it important that she get home?
Yeah, especially when she purposefully took the detour.
Yeah.
Spell. Oh, it's hard. Okay. Her feet pounded the road like sledges as she continued on the race, ever-dipping sun. As she collapsed in front of her house, trying to catch her breath, she laughed to herself. Made a choice and cleared up all the terminal. Okay. So her big long walk was kind of her coming to face down this decision she was going to make. I think that works. I would just continue to push yourself to just make it more concrete. It's hard to know like what this decision feels like for her. I'm not really like. She seems to have relief, but like, and she hasn't even gotten her answer back. So I do feel a little bit of the ambivalence there. Pushing the door open, she hoped dinner was ready, exhausted from her run. Peter was not the smallest some stew cooking as her mother tried to calm. No, but was serving 2 ornately clad soldiers. The time had come earlier than she expected. Hey, oh, there she is. Sorry, I went to seek Elder Hiram's wisdom, and I guess I lost track of time. I hope you didn't wait long. The elder of the 2 messengers stood. No, no, stole my child. We really only arrived here almost before you did. He took a second look.
Oh, the messengers.
And they went for the evening. Took a long way home, started through the path in the wood. Have to be brave to take that path.
Why?
Yeah, I didn't really see much danger. Besides the fact that she told me there was danger, but that's again the show versus tell.
Forbidden. I remember a forbidden forest or something.
Yeah.
Why was it forbidden? Is it dangerous there? Yes. Why is she brave to take that path?
Whatever response there.
Hung in the air for a moment before anyone spoke. Sorry was put at ease by the veteran man, while the younger one only seemed to stir up anger inside her. She still wanted to snap back at the arrogant sod. Oh, she's pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely a harsh mood swing.
Yeah.
But speaking to Jeff's point about being concrete with things, stirring up anger inside her is fine, but that's not concrete. Concrete would be like, okay, that's there. What does that make her do? Or what does that make her think? That would be something concrete.
Yeah, I think the dance point, giving us a little bit of access to her thoughts and showing that progression of emotion. You know, it's from, it feels really sudden right now. So saying like, you know, or foolish, the second soldier climbed in. She rocked back on her heels, eyes wide. No one could talk to her like this after how she performed in the trials, and after all she'd sacrificed for her family. And then she like gets really mad, like, you know, whatever, you know, because whenever we get angry, there's some sort of accompanying image or thought that comes with it usually. So showing us that can bring us into later, Sturtle. Have a good one. Showing us that can bring us into the scene a lot more and make us at least understand.
Don't tell us that she's angry. Show us that she's angry.
Yeah, and that's the problem with being less concrete, is that people can have different interpretations. So for me, like, you know, without her giving me the context that maybe that's like really rude to call someone foolish, like that's like calling them a freaking idiot, like a dude, like, you know, whatever. Maybe it's like really bad to be called a fool in this world. Without access to that, I'm gonna interpret it my reader's lens, which is like, yeah, she's like a kid, he's her elder, he can say that, that's totally fine. So yeah, those are the types of questions. That's the type of risk that being less concrete can bring into your writing. VR chat,
Boys.
Oh, it's this. It's a game that 667 was telling us about. We'll watch the trailer after this is done. I'm kind of curious now. Let's see. I pulled up another window. Well, on to business. I am Major Grawl of the Sabres of Katharina, lead recruiters. I'm honored to extend an open invitation to our ranks. Taking it back. Never dreamed to be the elite Imperial Guard, the hammers of the Heavenly Queen, Knights of the Draconian themselves. That's good. At least we're seeing her surprised, and she's giving us that context. We're getting an emotion. Mm-hmm. So you're doing a lot of work. You're getting an emotion across of like awe and excitement. You're getting world building across by telling us that there are these ranks to these orders. And you're getting, you know, that specialness of the situation across. This sentence is doing a lot of work, and that's because it's like coming from her view about her situation. Erica Drayton, hello. Don't watch the trailer, just watch streamers. Excuse me. I'm not
I don't really use Twitch, guys. Thanks, though.
What a noob.
I don't do that Twitch thing. Just kidding. Speechless lass. You'll really be at a loss for words when I tell you this. You're even deemed worthy of an officer, Kenneth. Speech. Oh, maybe it's commas.
What?
Speechless lass.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Commas matter. Yeah.
You speechless lass.
So I thought he was like pissed. I was like, oh. Yeah. Blasted back into living a saber officer. To hell for anyone. She had resigned herself to the notion that she was like to live in a small farming village for life. Are you sure this?
Jesus.
Gosh. Are you sure this simpleton is really the candidate? This fatherless, demure, slow. What? This candidate? I think it should be like this.
Yeah, yeah.
The younger soldier sniff. Watch it. The younger so this guy's a kind of a demure, slow girl. This seems like a very quick change for this character because his other comment seemed innocuous, though a little bit condescending. This one seems actually aggressive. So I would maybe set up some sort of clarification of motives. Seems a little... The hammers of the heavenly slow girls. It's true. Seems a little intense for someone who just seemed condescending earlier. Might need a setup or an escalation. Yeah.
Did he not know beforehand who they were going to get?
Yeah, like he's like.
This seems like a reaction he'd have privately to the major.
Yeah, it's kind of a jerk move to be like, man, damn, they're really dumb and slow. God, But
like, he just seems surprised, like this. Yeah. Surprised at what they're going to get. I would think that he would have had that conversation privately to the major, and he'd be looking for ways. Like the major had already don't say a word. I know this doesn't agree with you.
Yeah.
And then this other soldier would be like trying to find ways around, like make snarky comments, but not directly and not like on the nose to the point of what he's thinking.
Yeah,
but that's another conversation entirely.
And that's another good way to show even about the you fool thing that he says earlier. Like, are you foolish? Like maybe the major is like, hey,
we talked about
this earlier. Don't bring it up. And that's a really good way of suggesting that conversation without having to like go and like have a whole scene. Is that fiction sitting next to you? It is.
Hi, Erica.
Fiction, my dear. Hey, this is mine. What up, Chadfather? Welcome. Yes, and we have a recording as well, so fear not, your information is here. That is indeed. Welcome. I'm glad you made it for the Fiction Ghosted Me last year.
I did.
Really? What happened? Sketch. Oh, for the
concert?
The concert.
Yeah. Sorry, man. I tried apologizing. Sorry,
this is the least word vomit of my nano piece. It's all good. In Fiction, I hardly recognize you without the beard. The beard's here. There's a beard. It's not as majestic.
It's not as majestic and bushy.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, actually, and depressing. We talked about this earlier. Watch your tongue.
We talked about this.
Watch your tongue. Do you want? I accept your offer. I'm honored that you think I'm worthy. Big mouth quick. It's okay. It's a little self-aware. So this is especially an area where maybe these flaws, and I can kind of tell that you're setting this character's compulsion and her want to like put down the people who talk shit about her. That's like her flaw, which is makes a lot of sense, a really solid flaw. She probably wouldn't be this self-aware of it. So it could be something that her mother brings up to her and says, hey, you really always, whenever someone talks some smack to you, you freak out and you go over and above to prove them wrong because you're insecure about your father or whatever. But
vice versa. But it's very seldom that he will be like, hey, I'm getting a little too angry, but whatever, screw it, I'm joining this thing, you suck, I'm over it. Like, those types of things are not usually in the hero's mind. This feels a little too self-aware. Perhaps her mom brings this up to her. I only like it if I can nest in it. Oh yeah. Other guys, I was like, so I suppose it wasn't for. There's what the market company requirements for you.
I actually really like this personality trait of hers, where she cannot resist one-upping, but like you say something about her dad or her station in life, and she just immediately
like goes YOLO.
It's just like a button, like a reaction, like a reflex.
Yeah.
I would like to see more of that in the beginning. And it's not like just because it's not there doesn't mean that it's bad. I just like want to throw it out there. That would be cool to see.
I concur. I think this is a really great, really relatable character trait. And back to like, world building, these are the types of things that everybody struggles with. They get, is treated or talked down to.
Mm-hmm.
How do they react? It's a very human question. It's one you've executed really well. So blow it up, keep using it. It's working.
And also like that moment after you do it, it's like, why did I do that?
Like, what the hell? I just won this competition. I didn't want to win because this was this was
the plan. I went over here. Well, why did I do that?
Yes. But we need to know the plan first. So we need to know before the contest that she only wants to just like skate by and make the food money. And then we see it escalate. And that's, I think, kind of ordering how you give us that information a little better. And that is something that will take a few drafts. Just saying, hey, how do I order the information about the situation, the characters, the world, the stakes of being in this competition in a way that builds the drama as well and builds this understanding of her not being able to say no to a challenge. I don't think so. I wrote this character to be kind of, well, you say I can't do this, watch me. What? Yeah, I think it's coming through really well.
Okay, yeah.
I only went to 3,500. Well, I don't think it fit for your thing. You're still welcome to read it. Cool. There's a fire in this one. She'll make a fine commander one day. There's a fire in this one, Major Grawl laughed. She'll make a fine commander one day. It's rare for a small ministry to send one candidate. It must be a bountiful year for this area to offer two. Who else was selected? But even as she asked this, she already knew the answer and made her blood boil. Carton. Yes, the young Markin boy was deemed worthy, though wasn't fit for the officer school. Hope you two will end up getting along. They have to send it in, the sinister.
I smell a love story.
See, the sinister foreshadowing fashion. The two men stayed for a short time longer before leaving for the long trip back to the capital. Knowledge that even when she was joining the most prestigious academy, a member of the nation's elite guard, that rotten brat would follow her. With some small solace knowing that she would be more important than him to start. But the fact that he could continue to taunt her and mock her settled her. It was too late to go back now. She'd given her word that she could go. She was not. Oh, well done.
Chapter 1.
Yeah, of chapter 1. Yeah, that's actually the whole story. The novel ends here. Great novel. It's a really fast one. Okay, cool. So I think some of the overall notes in terms of world building, ordering that information is going to be, really critical. Make me ask the questions. Set things up so that it opens up possibilities, dramatic questions. Hey, I want to lose this competition. That'll have us asking why. Like, why doesn't she want to win? She's entering a competition. Why is she not wanting to win? Those types of things. Showing us her family and that need a lot more. That need wasn't super clear, and nor was it really clear how that competition, the need, and failing the competition met that need. Those are some questions I think we were asking pretty early on. But those are all in the recording. I think the biggest thing to do would be to get into scene more. Find a few big moments, expand those out a little bit, and bring that goal and conflict. When the scene starts, make sure it's very clear what the goal is. Show us an obstacle and then show us a turn. So saying, hey, she
thought she was going to fail this competition, but she was so overcome by how mean this guy was. She's going to freaking crush him. Does not care. She's going to crush this freaking guy. And then it escalates from there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not accepting work at this moment. I have too much on my plate with my own writing. I hope to be able to find the time I need to get to what final boss editing does and get my own feedback on my work.
On
Yeah.
work. Her work.
Oh, are you doing edits, Erica? That's awesome. Welcome to the team. Yeah.
Order the information.
I'd say bring the world building into the scene.
Through scene, not the scene.
Oh yeah. Scene and character. Yeah, observations. And, people only notice stuff that's out of the ordinary. So they may make an offhand comment about, oh, yeah, it's a dragon roaring at night. Oh, it's keeping me up. Because that happens. But, the thing the character is usually going to be focusing on is the conflict or what's going on. Like, I hate that freaking bully. His father is a dragon lord, but he thinks he's better than everyone else, but he's a total tool. Whatever, I don't care who your father is or not. Those types of things can make it feel a little realer, more human, but also get that information across.
Any other final thoughts, Diction?
I think along with the order of the information, give due space to the different world building aspects that you want to bring in. So, I was talking about need to give, like, the family's hungry. They have a need to fill. Like, why are they hungry? What circumstances in that world make them unable to feed themselves? Explore that and, like, thoroughly before you move on to something else. Like, this is the solution to that. I need to enter this competition to get the stipend. And that's fine. It's not dangerous, as we found out. But the thing is, if I do well, which I know I can do, I will get taken away from my family, and they won't be able to survive without me.
Yeah.
But here's this asshole over here that's taunting me and telling me that I can't have this. I'm not good enough to have this, so I know that I'm better than him, so I'll just do, like, a little bit. I'll do good in this one thing. Yeah. Like, oh, that felt good.
I'm gonna go.
And then I'm gonna go to the next thing, and like, yeah, I can let that one go. And then the next thing is like, I'm gonna take this one because he was such an asshole when he won the last one. And then maybe he beats you at that one, and then that, like, stokes the fire. Like, okay, I'm really gonna bring it now.
Yeah.
And then she gets lost in that, and that snowballs, and oops, I won.
Yeah.
Now I'm being taken away. So, like, give this. You can't get into that until you've thoroughly explored, like, what circumstances surround the family being hungry. Why this is a solution to that. And you can explore what the games are and what it would mean if she won. And then get into, like, oops,
I won.
Now I have to figure out what to do.
I agree. I mean, I think
so. That sort of exploration, then compression, exploration, compression, exploration, and compression.
Yeah, I mean, also just remember goal, stakes, and urgency. With that family, what goes wrong if they don't have food? Does mom go out back on the streets? Like, what happens if they don't get food? Give us a little taste of that. Maybe they're actually, like, starving and getting really desperate, and it's the only reason she goes into this competition at all. Like, show us that desperation. Show us her dealing with that little problem. It doesn't have to be a 2-chapter long thing, but it can be like, I need to steal today, and this sucks because if I do, I won't be able to do other things. And, like, maybe it's the first time she's had to steal food and it's getting bad. Like, those types of things can little. They don't have to be these long character arcs. They can be little goals that
Mhm.
can carry you through the exposition until you get to one of the major hooks. Too far in depth to cut it back, perhaps a little bit too much. Yeah, I think it's just. I think kind of to Dan's point. I think some of it involves compression, like compressing a lot of the world building stuff, compressing a lot of the details, but expanding the scenes, expanding the moments with the family, expanding the character moments where they're hurting or where they're feeling something. We'll feel it. But yeah, great job, Childfather. This was good work. I'm excited to see your revisions hopefully soon. And thank you for the sub. This was a priority edit. So for those brave souls who sub, you get to skip the line. So you got
Cue skippers.
Cue skippers. Anyways, guys, take care. See you all soon. I'll find someone to host because there's a good chunk of people watching. So be ready. I'll be looking for another writer out. Later.
Peace out.
We did get the dice. Yes, thank you, by the way. Much appreciated. The Childfather sent us some, because me and Fox played D&D on stream.
So nice.
He sent us some dice. I think I have them at my apartment. But yes, they're very
He brings
sweet.
his apartment around in his book bag.
Yeah, I bring my apartment around. I bring a lot of crap in my book bag.
It's like a Harry Potter bag.
Yeah,
He just goes zip and it goes.
wear it like a suit. Live in there. Cheaper than rent in San Francisco, I'll tell you that much. Anyways, guys, take care. Have a good one.